Hey, FlimsyLunchTray here, and welcome to World of Warships in Standard Battle Archipelago. And I have a statement to make. Make mid-tier great again. Or I could also say make low-tier great again. Or we could just say make mid-tier and low-tier great again here in the game. So some of you who have been following along with some more recent videos, like I just featured the Smith, the tier 2 premium American destroyer. And I don't know if I had another lower tier battle not so long ago. But I have just been taking some more time out lately and playing low tier, playing mid tier in the game. Now, I don't really care to hear about the seal clubbing argument and that kind of thing. I think really seal clubbing would be tier 4 and lower, in all honesty, because at tier 5 you can see tier 7s. But I've been playing the lower tiers just to have some fun and have a different experience in the game compared to, let's say, really starting at tier 8 and up, compared to the high tiers, just to have a simple game of World of Warships. Now, I'm going to be making a video eventually kind of talking about kind of where the game seems to be going lately within the last year, 2 years. It's kind of taken a very interesting shift. But essentially, I don't want to give away too much in that video, but right now, I think in the game, in terms of their higher tier ships, there are 26 ships in World of Warships with the funny button, where you have just all these consumable, like, they're not even consumables. I mean, there's even gimmick consumables, but to talk more about just how the higher tier game is kind of getting a little bit frustrating, and here we're going to have a little bit of a funny moment. I had to lock on incorrectly there. Yeah, goodbye. But getting so frustrated with the game at the higher tier just because it feels like there's just so many gimmick buttons in the game, and I kind of want to just be able to, so to speak, play classic World of Warships, if you will. I want to go back to what the game sort of used to be like when I first started playing back in the fall of 2019. I've been playing the game for 5 years now, where it's not all this complicated things, or hey, this guy can hit an emergency 25% engine boost and then have this guy use burst fire, and then this guy, after you shoot him so much, pushes a funny key and his secondaries become more deadly and longer range. And I don't know, I'm gonna have a whole video kind of talking more on that line. But just to have a simple game of World of Warships. It's not complicated. We're just playing the game without more realistic, more historical context, if you will, right? So you'll notice in this battle there are bots in this game. That is certainly true. I think there's two reasons why there's actually, I've noticed a bit more bots in the mid tiers lately, more than normal, because I really like playing tier 5 games with like a lot of human players. It's not so normal that I don't see a lot of humans at the mid tiers, but I think it's a combination of now you have operations where you can play tier 9, tier 10, so that's pulling in a new crowd of the player base. We have, in addition to randoms battle, we have mode shuffle. In addition to that, you have ranked, and then in addition to that, you have brawls. So there's a lot of game modes right now that's kind of competing for the attention of players in terms of the PvP content in the game. But then I think this is on the NA server. I don't know how it's been on the EU server, but I would also venture to say that because of some of the storms, the hurricanes we've had in NA, North America, hitting Florida and, you know, up through the Carolinas and stuff. I've got multiple good friends that have been really hit and have had, you know, been without power for like, you know, days, over a week and stuff. So that's been heartbreaking to see. But I think it's also pulled a lot of people away from the game, so to speak, because in like earlier in the day, like this is playing like 6 p.m. almost, maybe 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. They have a good, I'm going to shout out to all you retirees in Florida who play the game earlier in the day. But there's just, we've lost some, I think, people in general because of the different game modes and maybe some of the storms we've been having in the US. But I digress. So to talk about why is mid-tier fun or low-tier fun? Why should you play mid-tier? Why should you play low-tier? I mean, honestly, there's a lot of reasons we could get into, and I hope this isn't a bit of a word soup. But in terms of the mid-tier experience in the game, it's quite simple, right? As I was just talking about, you don't have all these gimmicks. You know, I don't think you start seeing any radar tier 7, if I remember right, like with Atlanta and stuff. I mean, and that's not really even so much of a gimmick, so to speak. But it's just kind of really simple, where you're rewarded for your positioning. If you want to like understand like map awareness, being rewarded for your positioning, then the low tier, but maybe even more so the mid tier, can be quite really rewarding, because you know, mid tier is a little bit more difficult, so to speak, than the lower tier. You'll get more humans at mid tier than you will low tier. But it's kind of just a classic example of how your positioning rewards you, how this map awareness really rewards you in the game, depending on what class of ship you're playing, right? Whether you're talking about destroyer, cruiser, or battleship. It really rewards you on those things. So when you really begin to understand map awareness, your positioning, you know, seeing how the enemy team is moving around, things like that, depending on what class you're in, then that really is rewarding for, I would say, for players as you ascend to the higher tiers, like if you're newer and you're filling the game out. But the mid tiers are a really great place to learn a lot of fundamental game things here in the game of World of Warships. For me, Nicholas is actually my second most played ship in World of Warships in terms of random battles. Just because, I mean, she's really strong for a tech tree ship with her guns and her torpedoes that reload quite quickly. So Nicholas can be a really rewarding ship to play, but she has a bit of a more like dangerous, or not dangerous, a little bit more of a risque play style, because she requires you to utilize islands, getting close with smoke screens, to get closer to the enemy to make your torps of any use, right? Torpedoes only 5.5 kilometers on the Nicholas, and then, you know, we see guns 10.9 kilometers with the current build what we have, which I think is actually stock, but I can't remember off the top of my head. But so yeah, so that's kind of the pros and the cons in a nutshell with Nicholas. She just requires you to get in close and fight. You know, then you have other battleships like, let's take an example of the premium HMS Agincourt, right? That ship is really fun to play. It rewards you in terms of being probably among the best of the brawling battleships at tier 5. But if you push in too early, you're probably going to die. You get focused by an aircraft carrier, CV player, you're going to die because you don't have any AA, right? So there's some things like even that ship can teach you as you ascend to the higher tiers and you're brawling in tier 8, tier 9, tier 10 battleships. So in terms of the player experience, it's quite rewarding. But then if you just want to have fun and just enjoying the game in general, like the low tier, mid tier is actually, it's much more laid back. It's not as stressful. You're not constantly, I mean, at least for me, constantly, if I'm playing a tier 8, tier 9 cruiser and I have it's tier 10 ships and super ships, right? I'm not having to constantly sporadically looking around the map. It requires a lot more map awareness at the higher tiers to see if I'm going to get cross map shot by a Satsuma, right? As an example. So it's a bit more relaxed. The pace, the game pace is slower as well, especially for lower tier, but it's definitely true for mid tier. Everything kind of happens in slow motion, so to speak, if you will, right? Battleships are going about 20, 23, 24 knots. Destroyers aren't zipping across the map at 50 knots. CVs are, there's nothing crazy, incredibly overpowered about the mid-tier CVs, I would say, in my opinion. Cruisers, you know, you have a large citadel on tier 5s, you know, looking at you, Omaha. So there's just kind of like those certain things that happen at the mid tiers, happen at the low tiers, much more slower pace. So it's kind of more enjoyable in the game. You tend to find maybe some more good camaraderie in the mid tiers. So like more nice chatting, because NA is quite chatty, if we're being fully honest. And going along more lines with the question of why you should play mid-tier, you know, I guess the reasons as this gave also feed into that. But it's just a good way to be able to increase your talent in the game, that as you ascend the higher tiers, it will just make you a better high-tier player in the game of World of Warships. So mid-tier is once you know, for myself, kind of being more of a veteran player now in the game of just 5 years, you really get to be able to, I don't know, you're experimenting, you're finding new things to do. So here in this battle, actually being super greedy for base XP, so I decide, you know, I'm not gonna pursue him, I'm gonna go cap. And I'm gonna get even more greedy, you're gonna see shortly. So we'll talk about that when the moment comes. So there's just this, when you have this greater awareness of the game and you've been more used to your positioning, your map awareness, the strengths and weaknesses of your ship, even before you step into the battle, right? As an example, once you've begun playing the ship enough, then it's more of a relaxed gaming experience overall, I would say, here in World of Warships. So it'd be nice, of course, to see more players back at mid-tier, but I think, honestly, that's just the season in which the game is in right now, in having mode shuffle back. And there's not, honestly, a lot of, you know, we still have a new ship line, the Pan-American battleships, but, you know, unless you're spending money, you can't grind, or you can't get to tier 9 yet, and you can't play the tier 9 to grind for the tier 10 yet, unless you spent money on those things before they get released in the next patch. So it's not a crazy, there's not dockyards, there's just a lot of things not happening in this update necessarily. And then you have a lot of game modes competing for attention from players, in addition to maybe on a North American server, you know, some of the crazy storms we've been having. Not to mention the wildfires out in Wyoming right now, which I think, if I remember right, I think I saw over 100,000 acres on fire in Wyoming. So that sucks, because my parents go out there and they love Wyoming. But in terms of this greedy point, I'm trying to see if I can't also simultaneously get the cap and kill the this last player here. I was afraid that the other battleships were going to blap him, so I took a break in firing. And then his fires go out, and it's like, so I was really trying to be greedy for the 6th kill and get a higher base XP and getting the cap. So I was trying to do both, but sometimes that doesn't always happen as we bring down to, I think, 600 hit points. So yeah, so I would be interested to hear your thoughts on the mid-tier player experience here in World of Warships for you. I mean, do you really like it? Do you find yourself playing mid-tier often? I mean, are there even things you don't like about mid-tier, and so like you prefer playing the high tiers over the mid-tier, low tier? So I'm just kind of interested to get some community feedback in terms of just talking about playing mid-tier, playing the low tier, and how you find yourself as a player. I mean, are you playing mid-tier, or are you not? And if you're not playing mid-tier, then why? I mean, I think one of the cons, when you think about pros and cons of mid-tier, especially much more for low tier, you don't earn as much credits in the game. I mean, we actually did okay in this game because we had a really good game. I don't always get over 100,000 damage at tier 5. So, you know, with the base XP, that it increases our credit earnings, so we made just under 400,000 credits all said and done. But you don't make as many credits, especially for low tier, right? And so you'll find better credit earners at tier 8 and tier 9, especially among the premium ships. So I know that's just a straight up con for players who are maybe needing credits to buy like super ships or just high tier ships in general in this game. So yeah, so please leave a comment below. Just what I've just said, you know, regarding, do you play low tier? If you do, why? If you don't play mid-tier, low tier, then, you know, why is that? We'll just be curious to know, and just seeing how this game continues to develop over the years as it goes by. So if you liked today's video, give a thumbs up. If you didn't, give a thumbs down. Subscribe if you want to see more. If you're subscribed, thanks so much. I appreciate it. Thank you to my Patreon supporters. And until next time, take care.